Hi, I'm Andrew Connell, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in the area of Microsoft 365 development. And I have a lot of experience with SharePoint development, including all of the different development models that we've had, Microsoft Graph development, Microsoft Teams development, and developing add-ins for Microsoft Office, as well as working with Microsoft Identity, including Azure AD. Conversational bots allow users to interact with your web service through text, interactive adaptive cards, and task modules. These bots can be scoped to handling simple commands. Developers can also create complex artificial intelligence powered by natural language processing and virtual assistants. In this unit, you're going to learn the basics of bots, the Microsoft Bot Framework, and the steps required to register a bot in a Microsoft Teams app to interact with it from the Microsoft Teams client. Let's start with an overview on the Microsoft Teams bots. Bots in Microsoft Teams can be part of a one-to-one conversation, a group chat, or a channel in a team. Each scope provides unique opportunities, challenges for your conversational bot. Channels contain threaded conversations between multiple people. This potentially gives your bot massive reach, but individual interactions need to be concise. Traditional multi-turn interactions probably won't work well. Instead, look to use interactive cards or task modules, or potentially move the conversation to one-on-one conversations if you need to collect lots of information. Your bot only has access to messages where it is @mentioned directly. You can retrieve additional messages from the conversation using the Microsoft Graph. Some scenarios where bots excel in channels include notifications, particularly if you provide an interactive card for users to take additional information, feedback scenarios like polls and surveys, and interactions that can be resolved in a single request and response cycle where the results are useful for multiple users or members in the conversation. Group chats are non-threaded conversations between 3 or more people. They tend to have fewer members than a channel and are more transient. Similar to a channel, your bot will only have access to messages where it is @mentioned directly. Scenarios that work well in a channel will usually work well in a group chat. This is the traditional way for a conversational bot to interact with a user, a one-on-one personal chat. They can enable diverse workloads, Q&A bots, bots that enable and initiate workflows in other systems, and bots that tell jokes, and bots that take notes. These are just a few examples. Remember to consider whether a conversation-based interface is the best way to present your functionality. So how do bots work? A conversational bot consists of 3 different things: a publicly accessible web service that you host, your bot registration that registers your bot with the bot framework, and your Microsoft Teams app package that contains your app manifest. This is what your users install and connect to the Microsoft Teams client, and they connect to your web service that's routed through the bot service. Bots for Microsoft Teams are built on the Microsoft Bot Framework. Microsoft recommends you use either the C# or Node.js SDKs to take advantage of the SDKs that they provide. These packages extend the basic bot builder SDK classes and methods. You can also use specialized card types, such as the Office 365 connector card. You can consume and set Microsoft Teams specific channel data on activities, and you can process messaging extension requests as well. Bots are created using the Microsoft Bot Framework, are diverse, and can be used in multiple platforms. Bots developed for Microsoft Teams contain some differences from other platforms. The primary difference in bots developed for Microsoft Teams is how the activities are handled. The Microsoft Teams Activity Handler derives from the Bot Framework's Activity Handler to route all Teams activities before allowing any non-Teams specific activities to be handled. When a bot for Microsoft Teams receives an activity, it passes it onto its activity handlers. Under the covers, there's only one base handler called the turn handler that all activities are routed through. The turn handler calls the required activity handler to handle whatever type of activity was received. Where a bot designed for Microsoft Teams differs is that it's derived from the Microsoft Teams Activity Handler class that is derived from the bot framework's Activity Handler class. Now let's look about how we can develop bots for Microsoft Teams. To create a conversational bot for Microsoft Teams, you're going to need to do the following things. You're going to have to create a web service, register the web service as a bot with Microsoft's bot framework, create your Microsoft Teams app manifest and app package, and then upload your app package to Microsoft Teams. Microsoft provides SDKs for multiple platforms, including .NET and Node.js. Now, this module is going to focus on the Node.js SDK. The heart of your bot is the web service. It will define a single HTTPS route on which you can receive all requests. The Microsoft Bot Framework will send different types of messages to your web service. Your web service can inspect the type of message to route to it to the desired logic. The other option is to use one of the available SDKs that expose methods the SDK will call when the messages matching the specific types are received. For example, when a messaging extension action command is invoked, the SDK will detect the message type of compose extension / fetch task and call the method handle Teams messaging extension fetch task method, passing in a context and the payload from the message that is sent as an HTTP post from the bot framework. The code here shows how this works. You can see here that we're extending the Teams activity handler. And then notice in the constructor, after calling the super method, we're saying go implement the onMessage event that's passing in a context and the next callback. That next callback is what we should call when we're finished with our work here. So here what we're doing is we're going to get the text from the activity, and I'm going to check what the activity text was. And in this case, we check to see that it has the text mention me listed there. And then what I'm simply going to do is respond by sending an activity back to the context. And then finally, I'm going to call the next method, the next callback method that was passed in. Now, once you've created your web service, you're going to register it as a bot with the bot framework. To register your web service with the bot framework, you're going to provide a secure communication channel between Microsoft Teams and your web service. The Microsoft Teams client and your web service never communicate directly, and instead messages are routed through the bot framework service. When you register a new bot with the bot framework, you'll associate it with a new or existing Azure app. This app contains an app ID and a secret that are used for the bot framework to authenticate with your web service and the Microsoft Teams app. Now, before deploying your Teams app and custom bot to Microsoft Teams, you're going to need to define the bot with the custom app. And this is done by adding an entry to the app's manifest file. You can use App Studio to add the bot to the app manifest file, and App Studio can also create a new app manifest file, or you can import an existing one to add a bot to it. The following JSON is taken from the app manifest for your bot that you'll create in the next unit of this module. This bot defines a new command, mention me, that is displayed to users who want to interact with it. Listing all the supported commands isn't required, but it does make your bot more user-friendly. A conversation is a series of messages sent between your bot and one or more users. There are three kinds of conversations that are also called scopes in Microsoft Teams. There's a Teams, which is also called a channel conversation that's visible to all members of the channel. There's a group chat, which is a conversation between a bot and two or more users. And there's also a personal scope, which is a conversation between a bot and a single user. The bot behaves slightly differently depending on what kind of a conversation it's involved in. Bots in a channel and a group chat conversations require the user to mention the bot in order to invoke it in a channel. But bots in a one-on-one conversation don't require the @mention. All those messages are sent by the user and will be routed to your bot. Each message is an activity object of type message. When a user sends a message, Microsoft Teams posts the message to your bot. Specifically, it sends a JSON object to your bot's messaging endpoint. Your bot is going to examine the message to determine its type and respond accordingly. You then can receive the message, and to receive a text message, you're going to use the text property of the activity object in the bot's activity handler. And then you're going to use the turn context object's activity to read a single message request. To send a text message, specify the string you want to send as the activity. In the bot's activity handlers, use the turn context object's send activity method to send a single message response. Each message is an activity object with a message type property that's set to message. When a user sends a message, the teams post the message to your bot, and specifically it sends a JSON object to your bot's messaging endpoint. Your bot's going to examine the message to determine its type, and it's going to respond accordingly. To receive the message, you're going to get or to receive a text message, you're going to use the text property of the activity object. In the bot's activity handler, you're going to use the turn context activity object to read a single message request. And then to send a message back to Microsoft Teams, or to send a text message, you're going to specify the string you want to send as part of an activity and then call the send activity method to send that response back. In this demo, you'll learn how to create and add a bot to a Microsoft Teams app so that you can interact with it from the Microsoft Teams client. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do to create a bot is to go register a bot with Azure AD, or with the bot framework, which is available from Microsoft Azure. There is another option. If you don't have a valid Azure subscription, you can use the bot framework registration portal, and the screencast or the module hands-on lab exercise that is associated with this module contains the instructions on how you can go about doing that, or contains links to where you can go and learn how to do that. In our case, we're going to use a real Azure subscription. So I've already gone ahead and created my bot. So let's actually see how to go about doing this. And if you want to see the steps for this, go check out the exercise and the hands-on lab associated with this module. And the reason I'm not going through those steps is because the Azure interface changes and receives improvements on a regular basis. So the steps may change. I don't want the screencast to get out of date, but the lab will always be updated within a couple months. Okay, so what I've done is I've already gone ahead and created this bot. So I'm inside of this resource group called Learn Teams, and here's a bot that I've created. So if I go ahead and open up this bot, so let's take a look at this messaging endpoint first. So what this is we're using a tool called ngrok. And what ngrok is a utility that allows you to create a secure mapping, a URL that is routable. It's a well-known URL that can point back to my local host. And so it starts up a local web server on my machine, and then uses the ngrok service to create a dynamic URL that I can point to that will handle all the requests, handle them back to me on my laptop. The free version of ngrok will always create a dynamic first subdomain here. I have a paid account, so I have my name in there, but you don't need the paid account at all. Just know that if you're using the free version, this subdomain is going to change every time you run ngrok. And so once you start it up for development, you're going to need to come back and update your bot framework to point to this domain, update it to the new domain that ngrok has created. Now, you'll see where that is when we get to when we start testing our app. All right, so that is my messaging endpoint. So let's go look at the settings for this. So I've given my bot a name of my team's bot. And if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see where I can set that messaging endpoint here. So I would just change out my name with whatever else it would be. Now, a bot is going to be associated with a Azure AD application. So I went ahead and created one here that you see that starts with F332. If I select manage, that'll jump me over to my Azure AD application. And so here's my Azure AD app that starts with F332. And it's inside of my directory tenant. The big thing that I had to do here is come over to my certificates and secrets. And I wanted to create a secret for my Azure AD app. So I've copied out the Azure AD app ID and secret. And if I come back over here to my bot, that it's been associated with my bot. Now, so the other thing I had to do is I had to go to my channels, and I had to enable the Microsoft Teams channel. So the web chat is already set up, but I'm adding in Microsoft Teams as well. And there's a whole piece where you just go through the UI here and select another channel on what do you want to integrate it with, and it'll work just fine. Okay, So now that all of that is set up with my bot, let's go back over to my my project that I've created in using the Yeoman generator for Microsoft Teams. So a couple things that I've done. In this .env file, I've specified the app ID and password for my bot. Now, you do this is just setting up environment variables on my machine. The .env is just a great way to do this in a demo environment. The code that we have that uses these environment variables, it will first look to this .env file, and if it finds it, it'll use it. If it doesn't find the .env file, then it's looking for like environment variables that are running in the web process. I've also specified my subdomain for ngrok to be my paid account, and my authorization token or my authentication token for ngrok is actually set somewhere else for safekeeping. Now let's go see where we registered our bot. So first, in my app registration here, my app manifest, I've set the ID of my app manifest equal to the ID of my Azure AD app. And then down in the bot, I defined a new bot. So I gave it an ID. I said, where is it available? And then I gave it a list of commands. So the only commands that we have is this one that's available in the personal scope. So in a one-on-one chat. And I gave it a command of mention me. And so what I want to do is that when I type in the command mention me, I simply want the bot to respond back with information about the person that sent the message to the bot. So let's see how that works. If I come over here to my code on ConvoBot, right? And if I look at this code here, what you'll see is I've created a class that implements the Teams activity handler. And in the constructor, I'm overriding the event on message. So this is going to be called when my bot receives a message. I'm going to be passed in a context and the next property. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the context of the activity that triggered this call, look at its text, trim out any white space, and then switch it to lowercase. And then I'm simply going to say bot message text equals mention me. So if it is for mention me, I'm going to do a one-on-one conversation with it. Now, the reason why I do this, when I call this one-on-one method and I'm passing in the context, is that I know that it's just a direct conversation with the bot. And if you recall from the lecture, I don't have to @mention my bot to get it to receive a message or to activate it in a one-on-one conversation. But if I'm in a channel, I do have to @mention it. And if I @mention it, then there's more stuff that's going to be on the text that's being passed in. And so in this case here, I'm checking to see where is that mention me. Does it end with @mention me? Because this part that you see where the cursor is going to be the mention of my bot. So here I'm working with a channel conversation. So here in my one-on-one conversation, I'm simply going to create a mention object that it says it being mentioned from this user. And I'm going to say, create the text, and I'm going to use this text encoder to add a reference to the current person. Right? So there's had this mention thing here. And then down here in the reply activity, I'm going to use the message factory object to say hi, and then pass in the text for that mention. That's going to create the @mention for me, so it'll be hyperlinked. Hi from a one-on-one chat. And then I'm just going to send the activity back. If I'm in a conversation, I'm just doing a little bit, it's just a little bit different on how I'm doing this. But I'm going to say we are in a channel conversation inside of a group chat with that bot. So let's see this in action. So now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to run my app by doing a gulp ngrok serve. And what you'll see when this spins up, see we're spinning up ngrok, and this is going to go kind of fast. Let me scroll up a little bit. Here's the URL that it was assigned. So you would be looking for that URL in the console, and I would need to go update my bot if I was using the free version of ngrok. And you can see it's also listed farther down here as well. So let's go into Microsoft Teams. I'm logged in as my demo user, and I'm going to go load my bot. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to upload a custom app. I'm just going to go ahead and upload my custom app. Here's our conversation bot. and it's telling me that it has a bot. And so I can choose where do I want to install it. Do I want to install it in a team? And let's go ahead and install it in a team. Let's do where's our test? Do we have a test team? We don't have a test team. So let's back out of this. Let's go create a new team. And let's do our bot tester team. All right. So now let's go back over to our app. And let's go add it to a team. There you go, bot tester, the general channel. So I'll go ahead and set it up. There we go, our bot's all set up. Now, it is originally going straight to, it's going straight to this general channel here. So now what I want to do is let's see what's available for our bot. So what was the name of our bot? Do you remember what that was? Let's go back and double check on our app. So it was called the Conversational bot. So I should be able to go in a one-on-one chat. So let's go find our bot. There we go. So there's going straight to our bot that we installed. And you can see here that it's telling us what can we do. This list of commands is showing up because that's what's listed in the manifest file for our app. So I'll choose mention me, just hit enter, and our bot should get the message and respond saying, hi, Megan Bowen, because that's who I'm currently logged in as, Megan Bowen. Hi from a one-on-one chat. But if I go over to a channel, such as our bot tester channel, and I do an @conversation bot, and from there I do a mention me, there we go. Now it just says, hi, Megan Bowen, and it adds in an extra message there saying that we are in a channel conversation in a group chat because that's how I set it up. So what you've seen in this demo is how to create and add a new bot to Microsoft Teams and interact with it from the Microsoft Teams client. Conversational bots can do many things within the Microsoft Teams client. They can subscribe to channel or group chat events, listen for and act on Microsoft Teams specific events, and even update their own messages. In this unit, you'll learn how to expand on your existing bot and add some of this functionality. Microsoft Teams sends notifications to your bot for events that happen in scopes where your bot is active. You can capture these events in your code and take action on them, such as the following: triggering a welcome message when your bot is added to a team, trigger a welcome message when a new team member is added or removed, triggering a notification when a channel is created, renamed, or deleted, and when a bot message is liked by a user. A bot receives a conversation update event when it has been added to a conversation, other members have been added to or removed from a conversation, or a conversation metadata has changed. The conversation update event is sent to your bot when it receives information on membership updates for teams where it has been added. It also receives an update when it has been added for the first time, specifically for a personal conversation. Here's an example of implementing different channel events. So we see our bot that implements the Teams activity handler or extends the Teams activity handler. And in the constructor, I'm overriding the event on Teams channel created event. Here I'm having passed in a couple different objects. I get the channel information, the team information, and the context, as well as the callback to go to the next turn in the bot turn. And so here all I'm doing is I'm creating an adaptive card, and I'm going to send that back as an activity, as a message activity. Now your conversation bot can subscribe to any of the following events related to channels. Channel members and teams are unique to Microsoft Teams. So we can see here we have things like team members been added or removed. You've got channel created, renamed, and deleted. There are team events for when the team has been renamed, and then reactions. And that's for when I do like a thumbs up or a happy face on a message. Your bot can handle instances where your user has reacted to one of your bot's messages. And this is done by monitoring the events, reactions added, and reactions moved or removed. Now your bot can update existing messages that your bot has created, but it can't update another person's messages. The following code demonstrates how to update an existing message. The reply to ID property on the activity that initiated the turn, you're going to use the update activity method to update the existing message. And then you can also delete existing messages. This is as simple as just calling the context.delete activity method and passing in the ID of the message that you want to delete. Conversation bots can do many different things within the Microsoft Teams client, and they can proactively send a message to a channel or group, listen for and act on Microsoft Teams specific events, and even update their own messages. And what we're going to see in this demo is that we're going to modify our existing Microsoft Teams app to update the bot to respond to message reactions and update and delete messages. And we're going to add those different capabilities. So if you recall from our previous demo, we've already registered a bot with the bot framework. We have already created the app ID, and we've already registered our app. So let's look at a couple things that we have here. First, here in our manifest, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look at our bot that's already been set up here. So here's our bot. We don't need to do any updates to the bot because everything is all set up and running. We don't need, in terms of updating it in Microsoft Teams, because the registration is not going to change. We still have this mention me, but we want to add additional capabilities to our bot to, say, responding with some other things as well. This command here, we could have other commands, but we're going to support other commands, but we don't have to go through and list them out here because we're going to show them in the help or the preview. So what I've done here, let's come over here and look at our app and look at the Convo bot, and let's see what we've done here. So what I've done is I've modified the code to where now inside of our onMessage handler, I now am going to go do a check. I'm going to see if a specific property exists on the bot. So I'm checking to see if the activity value property is defined, and if it is, then I'm going to look for this card action listed right here. So I'm either going to do an updating of a card or I'm going to delete the card. So if any of that's the case here, we're going to do one of those two things. Otherwise, we want to do some other stuff. Now, this is the part where we really want to focus on first, because this is going to be our initial scenario. So here we're checking to see what we did before. So is someone running the mention me or the @mention me from a channel conversation? We already saw that in the previous demo. But if they do anything else, we're going to respond with an adaptive card. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this object called value, and it's got a card action of update with a count equal to 0. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating an adaptive card, and our adaptive card, if I scroll down a little bit here, our adaptive card is going to have an action, and that action is going to have a title of update card with the value object set to the data property, and I'm going to respond with that. So let's actually see that run. So let's see that run first before we go any further. So I'll do a gulp ngrok serve. Let this spin up. And once we see our web server is running, okay, it's running. So let's come back over here to Teams, and let's just talk directly to the bot in a one-on-one. And we'll just do a mention me to make sure it's running. So here we can see our bot is actually running. Now let's just say something else. So this is what should trigger the adaptive card response. So there we go. We get our adaptive card response, and we actually called it the adaptive card response. So what this does is it's going to see how we just saw how we could respond with a card. Now what I want to do though is from here, I want to show you how you can also update this card or delete this card. So again, you saw that this button, if I come back over here to my code, you saw that in this button that we have right here in our adaptive card, what it will do is it's a submit action, and the title is update the card. So what I want to do is if I scroll up, remember, if the activity has a value of card action, which that was the value object, it does. It's got the update action. then I'm going to call update card activity with this context. So let's see what this method does right here. What this method does is he's going to take and create a new value that's going to have an update action, and it's going to take the count property and it's going to increment it by 1. So it's going to take the existing count object or property on the value property or the value that's being passed in, and I'm going to add it, increment it by 1. So what you can see here is I'm going to have text to show you what the updated count is, and I'm going to have two actions. One is to update the card. That's a copy of what we did before. But now I also have this delete card that has a card action of delete. So now when I when I click on this button, it should update the card to show me with a count of 1 because the first one was 0. And I should have 2 actions. Sure enough, the card got updated and we have an updated count of 1. If I select it again, it should say an updated count of 2, 3, and then finally, if I click delete card, let's see if it'll delete the card. It did, it deleted the card. So how did all of that work? So the way I did that here is that on the update card activity, after I created the card, I then called context instead of send activity, I said update activity. It had an attachment of the card that I created and the ID of the previous message. So this reply to ID, that was the ID of the message that triggered it. If I wanted to delete the card or the message, I just say delete activity and pass in the ID. So here what you've seen in this demo is how you could take the bot and respond with not just text, but respond with an adaptive card. And I was also able to update and delete existing messages. Proactive messages are sent by a bot to start a conversation. A welcome message and a poll response for an external event notifications. These are common scenarios for using proactive messages. So in this unit, you're going to learn how to send a proactive message from your bot. You may want your bot to start conversations for any number of reasons, such as posting about a welcome message for your personal bot conversation, poll responses, and external event notifications as well. Now, a bot that sends a message to start a new conversation thread is different than sending a message in response to an existing conversation. When your bot starts a new conversation, there's really no pre-existing conversation to post the message to. So sending a proactive message to users can be an effective way to communicate with your users. However, consider that from their perspective, this message can appear to come to them completely unprompted. So welcome messages will be the first time they've interacted with your app. You should consider to use this functionality very sparingly. Provide them with enough information to let them understand why they're getting the message. Proactive messages generally fall into one of 2 categories, as I said earlier, notifications and welcome messages. Now, your team-added bot can post to a channel to create a new reply chain. This code demonstrates how to create a new message in the channel when the message new conversation is received from the bot. So what I'm doing is I'm getting a reference to the current channel, and then I'm creating the message and I'm sending the message using the send activity again. Now, here's the message, how I'm going about creating the conversation. I have this method that I called on the previous slide called create channel or conversation in channel. So here I'm passing in the channel ID. So what I'm doing is I'm first creating a conversation parameter where I'm defining, is it in a group, and some data about the channel itself, and then what the message is that I want to create. So in this case here, it's just being passed in the activity. I then need to get a reference to the bot adapter and create a connection to the Microsoft Teams API, and then I'm going to create the new conversation and get a reference to it. And then I'm just going to return that back as a conversation reference. In this last demo, let's see how we can take our bot to send a proactive message. And a difference from what we saw before is that our bot was always responding to existing messages or modifying messages that it had already sent. However, there is a way, as we saw from the previous lecture, that you can have your bot send a proactive message and start a brand new thread. So how do we do that? So what we're doing here is we are looking for an activity. I've added a new activity called new conversation. And so this is a new button that we're going to have on our updated adaptive card. And this new conversation, what this will do is this is going to get a reference to the current channel. So grab the current channel, and then once it has the ID of the channel, it'll create a message and then call this method that we create here called create conversation in channel. So when we do, once we've had these things, we have our new conversation as this reference. We could then use that conversation in different things. We could delete it. We could go update it later. We could do all kinds of things. So let's take a look at this definition first. This get teams channel ID. This is a method that's being provided on the activity, on the core bot builder activity. So we don't need to do anything with that because we get that out of the box. So we have our get teams channel, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to call this create conversation in a channel. So the way that this works is I'm first going through and defining some parameters for it. So is it in a group? Is it allowed inside of a group? And then data about the channel. So the channel data, here's the channel's ID is where I want to post this new message. And then what message do I want to pass in? So here's my message that I want to pass in that I defined. Now the next thing, and this is just an activity that I'm passing in. So this could be an adaptive card. It could be anything we really want it to be. Next, I'm going to get a reference to the bot adapter and create a connection with the Microsoft Teams SDK or their API. So here's a reference to the current bot framework adapter, and then I'm creating a thing called a connector client, and that's going to point to the URL for my service. You could do this exact same thing or similar thing using another API like Microsoft Graph to send a proactive message. In this case here, the Teams SDK has already done a lot of that hard work for us. I then am going to create a new conversation by creating a new conversation here by saying create conversation and pass in the parameters. I'm going to then get a reference to the conversation that we're creating here. So my turn context get the reference for our activity that spun this whole thing up. So here's our reference. And then I'm going to say reference conversation ID equal to the ID that we created for our new conversation. And then I'm just going to return back the reference and the activity ID. And what that does is right here is where it's going to create that new conversation just like that. So we create the conversation and we associate the channel, and that's how we're getting that reference. So let's see this run by just running our gulp ngrok serve. All right, so now it's running. So let's come back over to our client and let's again trigger that the update card to happen. So something. So it should give us our new card where it has an update the card. And here we can do our update, but I can also say create a new thread in this channel. And so what you'll see here is that when I select this, it just went ahead and created our new thread, our new thread in the message. So here you've been able to see how to send a proactive message from your bot. Thank you for watching this module. I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope you learned something. This screencast is associated with, has an associated module to go along with it. And that module includes not only slides and demos, but it also includes a hands-on lab that will walk you through all of the steps that we showed here in the demonstration sections of this screencast. So make sure you check out the notes for this video to get access to the module where you'll find more information that you can use to get more about these resources. Thank you very much.